Good day, Professor and friends. Today we will be discussing for International Business Management Tutorial Assignment Week 2. We will be discussing two contrasting economic systems, free market economies and state-directed economies. We'll look at how each impacts economic growth, their strengths and weaknesses, and examples of the real-world economies. These are my fellow team member. I'm Jasmine, alongside with Salva, Aji, Seongjae Lee, also Teran, Nadya, Fadia, Adinda, and also Nabila. For the first question, let's define a free market economy. In this system, economic activity is primarily driven by private individuals and businesses with minimal government intervention. The market is regulated through competition, which drives innovation and encourages efficient resource allocation. Free market economies offer strong incentive for innovation because companies compete to attract customers and maximize profit. This competition can lead to improved products and services. Additionally, prices can serve as signals to allocate resource efficiency and efficiently, encouraging producers to respond to demand changes. Another key advantage is the attraction of investment. Free markets are often more appealing to investors, both domestic and also foreign investment, because of the potential of high return in a competitive environment. This influx of investment further stimulates economic growth. In contrast, state-directed or planned economies rely on centralized decision-making by the government. While this can sometimes stifle growth by slowing responsiveness, there are also unique benefits to it, like the ability to focus on resources on critical industries. And state-directed economies can achieve stability by guiding investment into essential sectors that might otherwise struggle in a purely free market. This approach can support long-term economic growth and help the government to ensure balanced development between and across regions and industries. However, central control can sometimes hinder growth, especially when it comes to political factors that override the economic efficiency. Decisions may not always align with market needs, which can lead to inefficient and reduced innovation. Now let's take a look at the real-world examples. The United States, with its largely free market policies, has fostered global competition's innovations. On the other hand, China combines elements from both systems, leveraging state support for specific sectors while also encouraging private and foreign investment to achieve remarkable growth. In conclusion, both systems have their own strengths, but the free market encourages competitions and innovations more, while the state-directed systems offer stability and can guide investment towards strategic sectors. But we believe that balanced approach can sometimes be more effective, as demonstrated like countries like China.
I'm Salva Azzahra, and I will explain critical thinking question number 2. A democratic system is an essential condition for sustained economic growth. A democratic political system significantly influences economic conditions. Trust in political institutions is essential for effective governance and a thriving economy, said Algan 2018. Democracies often provide firms with better opportunities and greater economic dynamism, resulting in enhanced performance compared to less democratic countries. Our research showed that democracy fosters civil society, which is crucial for tackling challenges. Without political freedoms, sustainable development becomes difficult. A 2019 study also indicated that democracies promote higher GDP through economic reforms, improved public services, and increased investment, thereby creating flexibility for addressing societal needs. We will then move to a case happened in South Korea years ago that proved if democracy really have significant impacts towards sustained economic growth. So South Korea actually transitioned into democracy in late 1980s. As a result, South Korea experienced rapid economic growth, often referred as the miracle on the Han River. with impressive GDP increase and significant improvement in living standards. The country successfully transitioned from a war nation to a thriving democracy with a robust economy. However, there's no guarantee that democracy always has significant impact towards sustained economic growth. Democratic transitions can introduce political risks, leading to policy volatility and economic instability. A 2023 study found that OECD countries' past GDP growth primarily influence current growth, with democracy showing a negative impact, while in developing nations, democracy alone did not drive economic growth. In conclusion, while democracy can enhance the accumulation of various forms of capital vital for economic growth, its effects are not universally positive. Nevertheless, it remains preferable to authoritarian systems as it ensures fundamental freedoms and equality, ultimately laying the groundwork for long-term economic development.
The critical thinking question number 3 is, what is the relationship between corruption in the country and economic growth? Is it corruption always bad? Economic evidence indicates that high levels of corruption significantly reduce a country's economic growth rate. First evidence is corruption negatively impacts foreign direct investment or FDI. The overall attractiveness of a country as a market or investment site depends on assessing the potential long-term benefits of conducting business there, against the associated costs and risks. So corruption has two primary effects. First, it reduces the expected return on investment due to increased costs of dealing with corrupt officials, and the second one, it increases the uncertainty surrounding occurring the return. As a result, risk-averse investors tend to avoid such risks and might withdraw from investing in countries where these risks are elevated. So by lowering foreign direct investment, corruption indirectly decreases GDP growth. The second economic evidence is corruption affects growth through its impact on the accumulation of human capital. So how could this happen? Corruption reduces the resources available for funding public services and inflates government operating costs, therefore decreases the resources available for expenditures devoted to operation and maintenance, ultimately lowering the quality of educational infrastructure. This decline in education quality adversely impacts human capital, reduces productivity, and subsequently affects economic growth. The question is corruption always bad? The grease-the-wheel hypothesis suggests that corruption increases economic growth by bypassing inefficient regulation. In environments where starting a business is hampered by strict regulations, bribing politicians and bureaucrats can lead to surge in economic activity. In China, for instance, although corruption is deeply rooted and widespread, many businesses choose to invest in the country due to its vast market potential. Interestingly, corruption can sometimes serve as a facilitator, helping to navigate cumbersome regulations and fostering the trust that business people need to feel confident in their dealings with officials. However, it is important to recognize that corruption comes at a significant cost, but money and lives, and its practice must be addressed and eliminated.
Okay, hello everyone. So I want to discuss the critical thinking question number 4. So the question is, you are the CEO of the company that has to choose between making a 100 million investment in Russia or Poland. Both investment is promised the same long-run return. So your choice is driven by risk consideration and assess the various risks of doing business in each of these nations. Which investment would you favor and why? So while we considering investment strategy in another country, it is important to know the legal, economical, and political decision to make a better decision. So in this case, it's Russia and Poland. So we must to know the first aspect is the legal system in Russia. Russia's legal system has made a lot of concern for many foreign investors. Russia has faced challenges related to corruption like transparency and inconsistent enforcement of laws. And the independence of judiciary also being questioned, which raising doubts about the fairness of legal proceeding. And this factor contribute a higher level of legal risk for business operating in Russia. The second one is Poland. Different with Russia, Poland has made significant strides in reforming its legal system. Poland also joining European Union and has implemented a measure to improve transparency, reduce corruption, and align its legal framework with EU standard. And as a result, Poland offers a more predictable and stable legal environment for business. The second one is political system. Russia's political system is dominated by centralized power of Kremlin. It can raise concern about the influence of the political decision on business operation. Additionally, geopolitical tension have made Russia's political profile more complex. And for Poland, as I mentioned before, Poland is an EU member. The country has demonstrated a commitment to upholding the law and democratic principle, and this will provide favorable environment for a long time investment. The third one is economic system. Russia's economy is laying on the natural resources like oil and gas. This dependence makes Russia's commodity price fluctuate, and the economic sanctions imposed by Western countries have also impacted Russia's economic outlook and contributing to volatility and uncertainty. The next one is economic system in Poland. Poland is one of the fastest growing economies in Central and Eastern Europe. The country has diversified its economic base, which is attracting investment across the various sectors, and its integration with EU single market has facilitated trade and investment opportunity and makes this country's economic more stable and resilient. So my recommendation, based on the assessment of legal, political, and economic risk, the investment favorability leans toward Poland. Poland's alignment with EU standards, stable political environment, and diversified economy over more conducive setting for a long-term investment. The legal reforms a commitment to transparency and further enhance the appeal of doing business in Poland. While Russia presents opportunity to do its vast market and resources, the high legal and political risk and coupled with economic volatility make it less favorable choice for the proposed investment. In conclusion, the decision to invest 100 million would be more prudent in Poland, where the legal, political, and economic system offer a more favorable risk-reward balance for long-term business operation. Okay, thank you for me.
Okay, hi guys. So today I'm going to discuss about the last critical thinking questions, number 5, which is the questions is about read the management focus about did Walmart violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and what is my opinion or maybe like my group opinions, and if you think it did, what do you think the consequences will be for Walmart? So, the Walmart cases was about allegations against Walmart, which involving bribery of local officials in Mexico to fast-track building permits and other regulatory approvals. And in my opinion, this kind of actions or act did violate the FCPA. And the actions that Walmart did, clearly alleged actions, would have provided a very unfair advantage over competitors who adhere to legal protocols. Because as we all know, we must obey the law in order for us to run something or businesses. And potential consequences for Walmart that I could think of. The first one is about legal consequences. If the Walmart found guilty, the Walmart could face substantial fines, which can be considerable under the FCPA. And other corporations found in similar situations have faced hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, depending on the severity and the extent of the bribery. And then the second one is about reputational damage, which means that allegations of corruptions and bribery harms Walmart's global reputations, because Walmart have a lot of branch, right? And especially in an age where consumers are increasingly concerned with ethical business practices. And then the next one is about operational reforms, which means that Walmart may be required to implement stricter compliance programs and anti-corruption training to prevent future violations. And then the next one is about deterring effects on competitors, which means that a high profile FCPA case could serve as a warning to other multinational corporations operating in foreign markets where bribery may be commonplace. And then the next one is about impact on Walmart growth strategy, which means that Walmart will faces increased scrutiny and regulatory hurdles, and it may slow its growth in international markets. And then the next one is about financial penalties, which means that Walmart could face significant fines from regulatory agencies, possibly amounting to millions or even billions of dollars, covering multiple jurisdictions. It's kind of almost the same like legal consequences. And then the last one is about stakeholder reactions, which means that investors for Walmarts or stakeholders that putting their money on Walmarts may respond negatively, impacting Walmart's stock value and overall market confidence. That's for the number critical questions, thinking questions number 5, and I hope it helps. Now you guys can move on to the next cases.
In this section, we are going to discuss the case study of China's economy. Now I'll be delivering and sharing our discussion result for the first case question about how we'll describe China's economy prior to the market-based reform and why the system failed to deliver rising living standards to the bulk of China's population. Now, after conducting discussion for the first question, we found that China's economy prior to the market-based reform was implementing a centralized or planned economic model. And basically, this economic model highlights how the government nearly control all aspects of the economy, such as production, distribution, resource allocation, and the pricing itself. And this model focuses on the heavy industry and collectivization. It means that the agricultural and industry were owned by the state. So there was no concept of individual ownership, which had to meet the government set production target without considering market demand. And the goal of this economic model was rapid industrialization and economic self-sufficiency. However, since everything is on the government control, so there were some disadvantages like lack of innovation and incentive for higher productivity. So we can conclude that before market reforms, China's economy was characterized by strict government control and then inefficiency, lack of competition and innovation, and limited global integration. And this combination contributed to the system failure to improve the standard for the China's population. The next trigger question is we are going to identify the reason why this system failed to deliver rising living standards to the bulk of China's population. And to address this question, we can highlight 5 key points that have been mentioned on the slide. The first is about impact on agriculture and industry, and the second is about inefficiency in resource allocation, and the third is about slow bureaucracy, fourth is about isolation from the global market, and the last one is political and economic issues. We are going to discuss the impact on agriculture and industry. In agriculture, farmers were not allowed to own land and were required to work in a communal system, so they had only little motivation to work harder or even innovate. And in industry, state-owned enterprises or SOE were focused on meeting quotas rather than the quality of the product itself. So, as a result, the goods produced often didn't meet actual demand and were produced in a low quality. Because most of companies were owned by the state, so there was no healthy competition, which discouraged innovation and quality improvement, as they felt no pressure to make it a better product or improve. And that's why they had no motivation and little incentive to boost their product and resulting in low productivity. The second one is inefficiency in resource allocation. We know that without a market mechanism to allocate resources, many products were either overproduced or didn't meet the actual needs or demand. As what I have mentioned on the previous slide, that the government only focused more on the heavy industries rather than daily needs, so people in China directly didn't feel these benefits on a daily needs. And unfortunately, this condition will lead to a huge gap between people who live in the rural and urban area. Next, about slow bureaucracy. Decision making in a centralized economy was highly bureaucratic, making it very slow to adapt to changes on the ground. On some real case, there is issue like the market need product A, but the government only focus on product B, so it lead to mismatch and piles of unsold goods. Next, isolation from global market. We know that China was not very open to any foreign trade and technology at the previous time, so there were high risks for them to fall behind technologically and miss out on foreign investment. Unfortunately, this condition led to economic distortion. And the last one is about political and economic issues. In a nutshell, Political issues like the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution caused major economic disruption, and it creating economic uncertainty, worsening living conditions, and resulting in long-term setback. In conclusion, in the late 1970s, China has realized and recognized that this system couldn't continue as poverty remained high, especially for those who live in rural areas. Finally, under Deng Xiaoping's leadership, they decide to create a market reforms to make the better economic condition, especially economy that more flexible over individual incentive and open up to international trade. And these reforms become the trigger for China's rapid economic growth in the following decade.
Alright, next is the second case discussion. How would you describe China's current economic system? What are the benefits and what are the potential drawbacks? Okay, so if we were to describe the current China economic system, it will be called the socialist market economy or mixed economy. This economic system combines two sectors. They are the private sectors and the state-owned sectors. Private sectors are the market-driven, with companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, and Huawei. These firms operate independently, but yet often guided and supported by the government policies. As for the state-owned sectors, they are the government-run companies that dominate strategic sectors like banking, transportation, infrastructure, and heavy industry. They account for a substantial share of GDP, around 27.5%. So, the state helped the development of the private enterprises in certain sectors. For instance, Huawei may have received $75 billion in state support in the form of grants, cheap loans, and credit facilities, and other things since 1995. This was based on the research by the Wall Street Journal. And there is also a history of state-owned banks making more than $30 billion in credit lines for Huawei customers since the year 2000. Okay, so now we know about the China's current economic system. So what are the benefits of the system? The first one is strategic economic growth. From the state-owned enterprises in their core industries, the government can direct resources towards large-scale projects that may help with growth. This model can help make China to be the global economic powerhouse, giving them a leverage in international trade and influence over global supply chains. The next one is support for private sectors. The constant support for private companies like Huawei with grants, cheap lands, and credit lines can help them to be globally competitive. The mix of private and state support enables China to dominate certain industries on a global scale. Next is flexibility in the time of economic crisis. Having both private and state control allows China to respond flexibly to economic shifts. In times of crisis, the state can intervene directly to stabilize the economy, whether through bailouts or policy changes. So, what are the drawbacks of this system? The first one is less productivity for state-owned enterprises. The state-owned enterprises are less productive compared to the private-owned enterprises, no matter how much support they receive from the states. The less efficiency of state-owned enterprises might affect the overall economic growth. The next one is trade tensions and tariffs. The subsidization of state-owned and private sector, like Huawei, has led to tensions between China and its major partners like the United States. For example, US tariffs on Chinese steel and restriction on Huawei show how foreign markets may limit China's access and slowing its growth. And the last one is economic growth slowdown. Reflecting on the previous drawbacks, China has faced a significant slowdown in its economic growth. For instance, in 2019, China's economic growth decreased significantly from 10% to 6.1% for the past 8 years. This is a clear sign for China to consider a reform on their economic system.
Hi, my name is Aji, and I'll be answering the third question, which is, would China's economy be better privatizing more of its substantial state-owned sectors? I believe that China's current approach to the socialist market economy, which has been proven to work for the past few decades, being more privatized could be both better and worse for China's economy, depending on what industries we're talking about. I believe that more foundational and stable sectors that the country has the capabilities to expand and self-sustain, such as banking, transportation, construction, agriculture, and manufacturing industries, are better off with more state-owned enterprises. On the other hand, more innovation-driven sectors such as information and technology could benefit from more privatized owned companies, since there's always new things to explore and compete for, as long as the country also supports it. By the foundation of the country, China is a one-party state, in which control over the economy by the government is crucial for the country. As for the questionable productivity of its state-owned enterprises, it comes down to the management and culture of those said state-owned companies. Overall, by looking at its track record, China is already on the right path for its situation, and privatizing more of its substantial state-owned sectors might bring more risks than return in the long term. So, in conclusion, I believe that China would be worse off privatizing more of its substantial state-owned sectors. Instead, it should focus more on improving its state-owned sectors to begin with. Thank you.
Hello, here's the response I prepared for question 4. Do you think the Chinese enterprises that receive substantial funds at below market interest rates from state-owned banks such as YA should be allowed to compete in international markets against private companies that receive no such assistance? What policy remedies, if any, would you suggest here? To begin, I believe that competition should generally be allowed. If a major company like Huawei were suddenly removed from the market, it would be likely cause major disruption. So instead, I think it's more appropriate to impose countervailing duties as a way to ensure fair trade. Companies that don't receive subsidies will naturally have less market competitiveness than those that do. So mechanisms like countervailing duties should be in place for companies receiving government support. Now, let me explain what countervailing duties are. Countervailing duties are measures that an importing country imposes on foreign products being sold at unfairly low or subsidized prices. These duties are meant to offset the advantage provided by those subsidies and are imposed in proportion to the amount of subsidies given. Countervailing duties play an essential role in protecting domestic industries and creating a fair trade environment. Their impact isn't limited to individual companies, they benefit the entire national economy and unlimitedly consumers as well. When domestic companies can compete fairly, they create jobs and have a positive effect on product quality, creating a beneficial cycle for the economy. In addition, for countervailing duties to be imposed, the importing country needs to show proof of harm to its domestic industry. This requires collecting and analyzing data to confirm the presence of subsidies as well as the market distortions and harm to the industry they cause. By following this process, countervailing duties are imposed fairly and transparently, not arbitrarily. Now, let's briefly compare countervailing duties with anti-dumping duties. When foreign companies sell products at prices significantly below market value, it distorts the market and anti-dumping duties can be imposed on those products. For instance, if I offer telecommunication equipment at an extremely low, unfair price, additional tariffs could be applied to maintain fair competition in the market. To sum up the difference, the key distinction between these two duties lies in who's responsible. Anti-dumping addresses corporate actions, while countervailing targets actions by government or government agency. Finally, since this question addresses companies that have received government subsidies, I believe imposing countervailing duties is the most suitable measure in this situation. That concludes my response to question 4. Thank you for listening.
Here are our references for the discussion and analysis of the critical thinking and case questions. Please check our references out for more information regarding the analysis and discussion. It's the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and we hope our material helps you.